Hey, welcome back to the Zombie Tactics channel. We've got the ammo can on the table here. That can only mean one thing. We're back into the ammo can of worms series, although there are no worms in here. Perhaps there should be. Well, what's in the can? These are going to look familiar. You'll remember this little thought exercise that we did last time having to do with me going into a bar and having a drink and how it looked like maybe I got poisoned, or somebody said I was poisoned at least. So let's talk about that for a second and what that exercise was about. Some of your responses were brilliant and some of them were really quite right on, and some of them were actually better than what I had in mind. People said various things. A number of people, either through email from the various forums or on YouTube itself, or PMs, said, well, it was pretty obvious that the last drink you took had the poison in it, and that's why you keeled over. And that, believe it or not, would be the most common response that most people would have because of something called the proximity effect. If I have a big red button sitting on the table and I mash that button with my thumb and then a car across the street blows up, the assumption is going to be that those two events are connected. Even if that button isn't connected to anything, it's kind of like you push the button and the car blows up. The human brain automatically associates those two things. So it's not stupid of somebody to think, oh, well, that last drink is obviously the one that got you. But other people were a little more thoughtful about it, and they kind of said, well, really, that security video didn't tell you anything. It could have been the first drink that got you, and maybe it just took 20 minutes for that poison to get into your system. Or in the same way, maybe it's the second drink that had the poison in it, and that just took enough time to get into your system before it affected you. Maybe it was the third drink, but we don't know from that video. It doesn't tell us anything. Frankly, some people said things that I thought were kind of neat, which is like, well, you don't even know from that video whether you were poisoned at all. You're going to have a medical examiner or somebody figure that out in an autopsy. And that's true. You wouldn't even know if I was poisoned. I just set the scenario up that way as somebody saying, hey, that Zombie Tactics guy got poisoned. But a medical examiner would have to come along and say, oh yeah, there's X amount of strychnine or arsenic or some other poison in his system, so that's the cause of death, and we've determined that that's actually the cause of death. That caused his nervous system to shut down or his heart to stop or something. And then, based on the evidence collected at the scene by the crime scene investigation unit, they'd have to do a chemical analysis, take little swabs inside the shot glasses to determine if there was any poison at all. And if the poison that was in the shot glasses was sufficient in concentration, likely that's actually the method of delivery. It could be that there would be residue of those poisons on those shot glasses, but that I was actually poisoned someplace else. So that's the point of that exercise, kind of, that eyewitness testimony, sometimes even testimony that's on video, you're seeing what happened, but that's not necessarily telling you what the meaning is of what happened, or what actually killed somebody, or what actually had the effect. Now that effect applies equally to you and I, common, everyday, ordinary citizens. It also applies to criminals, to soldiers, to hardened cops who've been on, in 20 gun battles. It doesn't make a difference. It's a physical effect. It's that flight or fight combat stress, or what Rob Pincus would call a dynamic critical incident. And you have to say it that way with your hands out. And it's good that I'm bald if I'm, being Rob Pincus here. Rob's great. You should read his stuff and buy his videos. They're good stuff. He knows what he's talking about. But it's a physical effect. All those things that you maybe have read about, you get tunnel vision, so you're really only seeing what's in front of you. You get this thing called tachophagia, which means that your mind is messing with you in terms of time slowing down or speeding up. Believe it or not, your brain will scramble the events so that later when you're remembering it, you can't tell what order things happen in. And quite frankly, you get all kinds of events and facts completely wrong about any incident like that. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and she used to be a bank teller, and she was robbed twice. And in the second incident where she was robbed, she had like a trainee or a supervisor or something standing right over her shoulder when the guy came up to the counter and said, "Give me your money." And her recollection of what happened, what the guy looked like, what he said, how it went down, was completely different than the person standing right over her shoulder. Completely different report. they had to actually, go to the bank camera and get a description of get a picture of the guy's face, because the description that both of them gave didn't make any sense, or it didn't line up with each other. So that's a physical effect, and it doesn't matter who you are. It affects you. Now, for that reason, eyewitness testimony has been proven to be very faulty when it comes to anything like a crime scene or whatever. There are ways that they correct for that. If you've got a bunch of witnesses, you can get them together and you take everybody's testimony, and only the things that everybody agrees on are the things that you can kind of roughly say are probably true. We'll get into that maybe in another episode. But there are books written on this subject. And it also means that these effects, like I said, you scramble up the events in your head. You've really got no idea what happened. That, plus the idea that we don't know the order of events and what takes place, like with something like a poisoning, or what we're really going to talk about, you have to put those two together and kind of say, well, okay, maybe eyewitness testimony or testimony from quote-unquote experience doesn't necessarily mean anything. Well, let's go to our second exercise, and that's the one that has to do with the eggs that we were using as zombies or zombie heads. And in that example, we picked up this ammo can and we dropped it on the zombies, and we dropped it this way and this way and this way, and we were simulating dropping shipping containers on zombies' noggins. And some of you were very creative and intelligent about your responses to that too. The most common comment was, well, it didn't matter whether one was 50,000 pounds and you dropped it on its side, or if it was 10,000 or whatever figure I used and you dropped it on its edge. They weighed so much and there's so much force involved that there was always enough force to do the job, enough energy, enough force, enough impact, however you want to describe it. And that was an important point, because if you're going to talk about something, doing some work, you get to a certain point where, okay, anything beyond that, you're really arguing about sort of insignificant details. Well, in that light, what are we actually talking about? Some of you guessed that as well. Some of you guessed that we're going to get into, oh boy, the great caliber debate. And yeah, we are. There's a 9mm round, and there is a 40 caliber round, and there's a 45 caliber round. And we're going to talk about the differences in the effectiveness of these rounds, the myths, the legends, the lore, the lies, the misassumptions, the bad studies, and everything like that, so that we can come to some kind of a determination about generally what's the best handgun round to use in a self-defense situation. I think you're going to find it interesting. I'm sorry that this is kind of being drawn out, but I'm doing it for a reason, and that's because we're going to take it step by step so that we kind of don't just get into this shouting match situation. I'm going to relay that information to you very carefully and lay out a case for you, and hopefully at the end we'll all learn something. Sounds like an old 80s sitcom. What did we all learn? But that's the approach we're going to take with this, and we'll continue on in the ammo can series as the Zombie Tactics channel rocks on. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.